Hey everybody, it's Alex, host of the Doomed Planet podcast. This is our 100th episode. Before I forget, at the end of this show, we're going to be talking a bit about our first ever YouTube video. It's called R.I.P. Anom, and it's about the 14-year-old kid who was hit by the Seattle monorail and fell to his death, and then the right-wing hateful response that followed. But now, Seattle Restaurant Wage and Tip Theft Hall of Fame.
10,000 workers are suing Chipotle, claiming the restaurant cheated them out of pay. Current and former employees claim that the company made them work, quote unquote, off the clock without paying them in a practice known as wage theft.
First tonight at 6, a Wisconsin restaurant owner shorting employees out of thousands of dollars.
Casa Tequila owes more than 100 of its workers upwards of $272,000.
Wage theft is the illegal practice of not paying workers for all of the time they've worked. And according to the San Diego State CPI survey released today, 77% of more than 330 restaurant employees surveyed report employers stole their wages in the past year.
Low country restaurants are accused of paying servers and bartenders less than they are owed or skimming tips that belong to the employee.
The pizza chain Zeeks has been ordered to pay $409,000 after allegedly failing to tell customers what percentage of a service charge went to delivery drivers.
3 recent immigrants say that they were forced to work 13 hours a day, 7 days a week at an East Bay business. And when they tried to quit, they say their boss tried to evict them because she also is their landlord.
I saw these posters around Seattle that say Seattle Restaurant Wage and Tip Theft Hall of Fame. And then they have logos for a bunch of local restaurants that have been busted for such activities. Red Robin, Canlis, Tom Douglas, Zeeks Pizza, Lowell's in the Pike Place Market, Great State Burgers, Hamdi, and Pagliacci Pizza. The bottom of the poster, some information. Seattle's wage theft ordinance went into effect on April 1st, 2015. The wage theft ordinance provides protections against wage theft by requiring payment for all compensation owed for work performed within the Seattle city limits, payment on a regular basis, and certain written notice to employees about their pay information and rights. So lucky you if you live in Seattle and work for a restaurant, I guess. If you're a small mom and pop business tyrant with like one restaurant, these big law firms are not going to go after you because it's not worth the trouble. But some of these chains, you know, like Zeeks Pizza and Pagliacci, Red Robin, sure, go after them. Tom Douglas, his empire. We've talked a lot about Tom Douglas, the restaurateur here in Seattle, so we won't go too deeply into his story. But in 2019, shortly before the pandemic started, employees and former workers, according to the Seattle Times, at Tom Douglas restaurants will get $2.4 million in a class action settlement. When Seattle increased its minimum wage, some restaurants instituted a surcharge or service fee. They claimed this would offset the burden of paying their workers the new minimum wage. Tom Douglas Kitchen, corporate umbrella for more than a dozen restaurants and businesses, implemented a service fee of 20% of a customer's bill. Guess where that fee went? Do you think it went to the employees? No. Tom is a unique case. He's kind of one of the point men for the gentrification of Belltown. At the end of this episode, we'll be discussing graffiti, and of course there are right-wing forces that do not like this writing upon the walls. One of those right-wing forces being Tom Graff of Ewing and Clark. He's a real estate guy that is responsible for much of the retail leasing in downtown Seattle. And he's been on the record with these hate groups, talking about how bad the graffiti is. But Tom Graff and Tom Douglas worked together to kind of set Tom up with this multi-restaurant empire in Belltown and downtown.
Guidance counselor in high school thought I had some talent, and got me a trail at a hotel in Wilmington, Delaware. And from there on, I got a job for $1 an hour, and now here I am in restaurant business here in Seattle.
This is from Eater, Seattle. Owners of Ballard's famed Turkish restaurant Hamdi accused of wage theft. 4 former employees said in a lawsuit that they weren't paid tips or given proper breaks. So, if you're a restaurant employee out there, hey, you get 3 other people, go to a law firm, you look it up online. Some of these law firms specialize in this sort of thing, and see what you can do. At the very least, you'll scare the hell out of these small business owners. Berk Guldahl and Katrina Schult of Hamdi allegedly didn't pay the plaintiffs overtime, didn't provide legally mandated breaks, and took tips that should have gone to hourly workers. Capitol Hill, Seattle, fine online newspaper. Next target for law firm that took on Pagliacci Pizza over wage theft, Zeeks Pizza. The same legal firm that wrestled Capitol Hill-based Pagliacci into settling a $3.75 million wage theft lawsuit with delivery drivers has turned its sights on another Seattle pizza target. Terrell Marshall Law Group is suing Zeeks Pizza. Zeeks has been sued twice successfully for this tip theft. They're running some funny business with the delivery charge that ends up not going to drivers. And one imagines they still might allegedly be doing this.
The genesis of Zeeks? To be our own boss. To not work for the man.
But settled as a more expedient way to resolve things, the company's statement read. Can you imagine? Yeah, that's why they paid out millions of dollars.
Pagliacci, to me, they have become a family of sorts. The people that I work with are amazing, and the culture that Pagliacci has developed is kind of unrivaled.
I've always liked Lowell's in the Pike Place Market. It's like a breakfast joint that's on 3 levels. They recently had to pay out over $400,000 in a wage and tip theft case. Come to think of it, a lot of these businesses at the market are engaged in sketchy shit like this. And again, many, maybe even a large percentage of restaurants in Seattle and, nationwide are engaged in this kind of tip skimming, tip stealing behavior. I once, won't name any names, I worked at a restaurant where the lead server's husband died of a horrible accident and she was pregnant. So they had a benefit, and then she told me later that they, with a big old tip jar that had thousands of dollars in it, she told me later that the owners of the restaurant stole like half of the cash. Yeah, Lowell's. Is it worth it? You can go for breakfast and get a Dungeness crab Benedict served on grilled rosemary bread. Okay, $33.95 plus tax, and of course the tip, which may or may not go to your server or the back of the house. I guess a Canadian bacon classic Benedict would be more affordable at $21.95. The atmosphere I'm realizing now, and the fact that you can get cocktails there and people are drinking cocktails at 10 in the morning is probably more exciting than the food. The Dungeness crab omelet, as written up in the New York Times and reviewed by Mario Batali, the disgraced chef, $33.95. I am hoping that they have fresh cooked Dungeness crab meat in these very expensive dishes and not that stuff you get from a can. Imagine being stuck on an island. Isn't there a Netflix movie about this? You're stuck on an island working for a chef that is the worst asshole. That restaurant would be the Willows Inn, north of Seattle. According to the Daily Mail, acclaimed restaurant that charges $225 for dinner agrees to $1.37 million wage theft payout to 137 staff. This restaurant forced workers to buy kitchen ingredients with their own money, as well as to forage for free ingredients in the local forests, which I guess... okay, $500 for dinner for two at the Willows. $740 if you want a wine pairing. You'd think that someone raking in this much money, award-winning chef Blaine Wetzel, would not feel the need to steal even more money from their workers. I mean, this is a place, not that big of a room, but the richest people in the world come and spend their money here. And, I guess I think cooking in a restaurant or cooking in general is an honorable profession, but the pay is shit and you get treated like shit by these pretentious assholes that think they're really hot stuff because they have this fancy style of cooking with the foam and all that shit. That's really over. I think there's nothing better than like a good Mexican restaurant or taco truck or a good pho place. And this whole concept of like every man is a king and deserves to be served in the old days. Like in the old days, the king and queen would have their own personal chef and be served by waiters. No one else did that. There might be an inn or a pub or a lot of street food, but there wasn't this bullshit of fresh ground cracked pepper, sir. Anyway, to be trapped, it's very remote up in the San Juan Islands in a way. You have to take a ferry boat to get places, and to be trapped with this fucking asshole. Good for him that he got sued out of existence. Fine dining. There's something to be said for that for a special occasion, a graduation, or a memorial service. Otherwise, what is that? And it's so damn expensive. It's just a bespoke product for rich people, and I don't think our planet can afford to do that shit anymore. Very recently, July of this year, Canlis just got sued for wage theft by two former servers. Canlis being the well-established, expensive restaurant run by the same family, maybe the third generation of the group of Greek restaurateurs. Thanks to Harry Cheadle, editor of Eater Seattle. I'm not sure. The media has shrunk so much. I think Eater Seattle is probably just him. Canlis told customers that a service fee added to checks was given to employees, when in fact Canlis was keeping the money, Seattle Times first reported. It's just so offensive that a profitable restaurant serving very expensive food to only rich people, because the people that work there can't afford to eat there, would have to get so greedy as to do this. Canlis has been operated by the Canlis family since 1950. The kitchen is run by Isha Ibrahim, who took over as executive chef in 2021. The lawsuit alleges that Canlis failed to pay wages for first-day trial training work and required or allowed employees to perform or work off the clock. Again, I'm just starting to hate these celebrity chefs. And they really trumpeted this, it's our first female chef. She also brought along her partner or wife, and they as a Canlis employee doing marketing or something. So it's like, ooh, I'm the hottest chef in the world. You want me? You got to hire my wife too. Like, what is she? Time for a career change, maybe. Anybody remember that whole PPP COVID loan thing? The largest upward transfer of taxpayer money in the history of the world? Well, I do, and I have the databases. We've got these loans for just $150,000. Again, it's not a loan. It was a gift from the government with no oversight and no payback plan. Undisclosed. They don't even have to disclose who it is. Retail bakeries. Undisclosed full-service restaurants. And here we have a loan of between $350,000 and $1 million. God, if I was a taxpayer, I'd want to know the specific loan amount. That loan went out to Lowell's Enterprises, owner of Lowell's in the Pike Place Market. Oh, look who got $1 to $2 million. Zeeks Pizza Incorporated. And another $1.2 million went to Canlis Incorporated.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Here is FCN-FM. The feed pellet machine can process grains, vegetables, meat, eggs, and other raw materials into uniform pellets, which is convenient for animals to digest and absorb. More things made in China, more feed pellet machines made in China. If you want to know more, please contact us.
Okay, we're back. It's good to know that the Doomed Planet podcast is now being sponsored by a feed pellet machine manufacturer in China. To wrap up this whole disastrous look at wage and tip theft in Seattle, we're going to talk about a place that I will not name because they have not been sued yet. They will be, though, because I worked there and I was contacted by some people. It's a pretty good bet that a restaurant is going to be a bad place to work when you're always seeing help wanted ads. But you know what? It's a strategy of this place that I'm not going to name to have high turnover, higher than the average restaurant, which is already high turnover. Why do they do that? Because no one is going to stick around long enough to get a raise or, God forbid, start a union. These ads that they're always running, I mean, you can come right out and say it. You're advertising for someone to work 2 days a week. And then it says compensation, full benefits after 60 days for those working on average of 30 hours or more a week. Guess who gets 30 hours or more a week at this restaurant? And of course, you're going to get minimum wage plus the tip share. How does the tip share work? Well, trust us. It's opaque, but really. And again, we need you to work 2 days a week. And once you average 30 hours a week, we'll pay 80% of premiums for medical, dental, life insurance. 2 days a week, even if those were 10-hour shifts, which they're not, that's not 30 hours. Looking through all this documentation that I sent to the law firm, when I was hired by a chef that quit soon after, he said I was going to be making $17 plus tips. I got my first paycheck and it was $15.75 minimum wage at the time. And so that's a little odd. And then there were some discrepancies. Oh, we didn't pay you enough on that check. We paid you too much. There is a tip pooling policy. Congratulations and welcome to the team. Here's some basic information, very basic, about our tip pool policy. All tips for the day are collected and divided based on hours worked for that day. The company withholds 2% of all credit card tips to help pay for a portion of the cost to process credit card payments. Can you imagine that? Now, that is legal, but that's just really an insult. If I read that, I'd say, I'm not sure I want to work for these people. You're dinging your workers to help pay fees. I mean, what's next? You're going to take 2% out for food costs? Okay, and then 8% of the tip pool is shared with the commissary team, which is a whole different thing. It's a chain of restaurants, kind of like a factory where they bring in all this like pre-chopped stuff and then process it out and ship it out. That's also a little odd. Like, the tips are not shared equally if 8% off the top go to this special group of people. But here's where they're going to get dinged. They do catering orders, and I mean big orders for Microsoft events, Amazon, stuff like that. And they charge a 20% service fee. So if you've got a $8,000 order, that 20% service fee could add up to quite a lot. But how do we know that any of that money is going to the tip pool? It doesn't say explicitly in the vague information they give you that this catering service charge is split up between the workers. Well, guess what? I know someone that runs a respectable Seattle company, and I said, oh, maybe you should try this restaurant. And sure enough, they did a catering order for this restaurant. And in the contract and on all the paperwork, nowhere is it mentioned where the service charge goes. So there you go. Busted. But yeah, it's not my job to do that. I'll just titillate you with that information. And again, I'm never working for any restaurants ever again. So I'm not worried personally about being blacklisted by the cabal of thieves that run these fucking Seattle places. Seattle Office of Labor Standards Wage Theft Ordinance Fact Sheet. Service charges. Service charges are automatic, separately designated amounts added to a bill. Service charges appear on receipts as service charge, automatic gratuity, etc. It is not a service charge if it is not described in a way that a customer might reasonably believe it was for services provided by an employee. What must an employer share with the customer about service charges? Employers who include service charges must disclose the percentage of the service charge that is paid directly to the employees. This is the law of the land in Seattle, and this mystery place that I have just described certainly did not do that, at least in the case of the catering order that I saw with the standard contract and everything. Looky here, they got more specific with their PPP loans. One for $1.2 million and one for $896K. And I'm sure that was fairly distributed to the employees. Ah, God, I have a bad taste in my mouth after doing that whole restaurant wage theft thing. So let's move on. It's our 100th episode of Doom Planet, and to celebrate that, I made a video. You can find that at YouTube at the Doomed Planet podcast, at Doomed Planet Pod on YouTube. It's called R.I.P. Anom. Anom is the tag of a 14-year-old child who was killed by the Seattle monorail while doing graffiti. I felt that a podcast wouldn't do justice to this story, and so it's kind of a montage, not much voiceover, and it shows footage that I took of graffiti and stuff from Anom's TikTok account, all in this sad montage. And it also talks about the right-wing hatred that spewed forth, blaming this kid. He deserved it, Darwin Award. And that hatred was fomented by none other than my neighbor, Ari Hoffman. He's a failed city council candidate in Seattle that owned a bouncy house company, and now he has a slot on a local talk radio right-wing hate show, and he will appear occasionally on Fox. Well, Ari wrote a story for the fascist right-wing rag Post-Millennial, blaming the parents, expressing no sympathy. These parents just had a child die. He expresses no sympathy for this kid and then goes on to betray his misunderstanding of what graffiti is. Ari, what do you think they were painting on caves 30,000 years ago? Okay, this is an art form. It's been around for a while, but no, he puts when they describe graffiti as art, he puts that in scare quotes. Oh, it's not art, it's vandalism. And the most hateful thing are the comments on Ari's articles and also his Twitter. People unleashing the worst hatred. I'm glad he's dead. He deserved it. And people with Confederate flag logos as their, Twitter icon, posting hateful stuff. Like, Ari, you're Jewish. Maybe that Confederate flag stuff, you should delete that. But no, he doesn't delete any of the hateful comments. And the best part about this video is that I got my pals at the Mechanical Freak Politics podcast to do a little voiceover about Ari. So we're going to wind up episode 100 by playing that. And 100 episodes, and there shall be many more, hopefully. Okay, Greg and Brian, take it away.
Are you one of the thousands of Seattleites who has been medically diagnosed as being normal? If so, you might be wondering, who is this hateful, annoying voice saying awful things about a dead kid? What kind of person gets so worked up about pictures on buildings as to lose all perspective on human life?
Why, that's local right-wing crank and D-list radio personality Ari Hoffman, of course. If you're thinking you've never heard of him because that kind of vile, reactionary fare doesn't have much purchase in moderate, progressive Seattle, guess again. This kind of stuff is all over the radio in this market, like it is everywhere in America.
The ecosystem of right-wing talk radio is so broad, so deep, and so well-funded that as it devolves down to the local level, you can be a talentless, boring loser and still fill up a drive time slot spewing trash on the public airwaves. Broadcasting from the basement of KVI AM 570, Ari is just another failed city council candidate that gets to have a sinecure in media because he's such an asshole. On the radio, Ari is dull. His talking points are reheated. His rants, well, let's just say they aren't going to lead to any embarrassing name changes anytime soon. In short, you probably haven't heard of Ari because he doesn't got the juice. He's no Dan Bongino.
He's not even a Mike Pence. So what makes Ari unique? What is the Ari difference?
It's his heart. Ari is in this for the love of the game. He's the kind of guy who would pick up the telephone, dial a small local movie theater, and demand to talk to the host of a local politics podcast just to complain that Palestinian stories are being told and heard in the city that he lives in.
As if they're human beings rather than a kind of infestation. It's this kind of dedication to petty, small-time crankery that separates Ari from the Jason Rances and Dory Monsons of the world.
Well, that and a still-beating heart in Dory's case.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, Ari is a hateful man. He sees an unhoused person on the street in a city as wealthy as Seattle and instinctively reaches for a phone to call in the police state. He saw a few needles on the ground one time and concluded that America's addiction crisis could be blamed on the Seattle City Council holding meetings without him on the dais. But more than that, he's a spiteful little crank. He once threatened to borrow a tow truck and haul the RVs in which some of the city's poorest residents are forced to live to the front of council members' houses. That's crank shit.
It sure is, Greg. When you take these qualities and add the secret grifter sauce of conservative AM radio, you get a man who has turned playing up the discomforts and petty grievances of the city's homeowners into a thriving business.
That's on top of his bouncy castle empire. It's all gravy.
He is a reflection of the type of people that make Seattle the city that it is.
He sucks.
This has been the Doomed Planet podcast. I am your host, Alex. Episode 100. We will see you soon. Goodbye.
5, 6, 7, 8. Goodbye. This is the end of the song.
A heaven spot is a location where someone might do graffiti where they could go to heaven for it because it's a dangerous location. It might be up high on the side of a bridge or on top of a building or billboard. And if they fall, they go to heaven.
With booze and women down below, Mr. Devil and I will just put on a show. Because if what you say is the positive truth, oh, death, where is thy sting? If what you say is the positive truth, oh, death, where is thy sting? I don't care about the pearly gates or to hear the angels sing. With booze and women down below, Mr. Devil and I just gonna put on some show. If what you say is the positive truth, oh, death, where is thy sting?
Robin, yum